Now, part of what happened in our human timeline that really is interesting to me is that in the 1930s, the early quarter, first third, first half of the 20th century, we got a couple of people in our midst that started developing technologies for nonviolence. So even though nonviolence as a concept had existed, this man, Gandhi in India, developed a technology for using nonviolence in civil situations, civil uprisings. And this was a major breakthrough. This was something that demonstrated that nonviolence can push out an oppressive government, an oppressive occupational force. Along with that, around the same time period, this man, Morihei Ueshiba in Japan, was developing the same kind of idea of nonviolence on an individual level through the creation of Aikido. And this Aikido was derived from a long tradition of Japanese martial arts that involved the use of very, very sharp swords, katanas, and was deadly arts. And through a spiritual epiphany that happened to him, or actually a series of epiphanies, he realized that his purpose as a warrior in the modern age was not to defeat opponents, but to reconcile differences. So he started transmuting what he knew as a killing, life-taking art into a life-saving art. And as his personal evolution took place, it became much softer and softer and softer and gentler, and he started using things like, saying things like, love was the answer, Aikido is love. And we took this upon ourselves. You see among us here now the latest generation, or maybe not the latest, but the current generation of Aikido-ka, people who practice what this man developed. And we probably in our own evolution in the art form, I've been doing it for about over 30 years, and my partners have along many decades also. We've probably seen a lot of evolution of ourselves from the idea that we went into this art to defend ourselves, but are coming to this point where we understand that it's not about defense, but it's about inclusion. It's about joining with our partner. And we find that when we join with our partner on a certain level, our partner's ability to maintain an attack disappears. And this is really fascinating, and this is something I hope that you'll experience some of today, even if you have no Aikido experience. Now, moving into the more modern age, into the last century, later in the last century, we get these two people who have now taken these technologies and further either use them or enhance them. We have Martin Luther King, and we have Marshall Rosenberg, the creator of nonviolent communication. So if you look at nonviolent communication, it's the closest thing I've ever seen to Aikido on a verbal level. It's not a matter of negotiating peace. It's a matter of coming to terms with your partner in an empathetic way so that the divisive things that keep you apart, keep you from finding a solution, disappear on a verbal level so that you can find a solution. My personal viewpoint of Aikido is that we interact with our partners in a way that we don't overcome our partner, we don't try to tell them they're wrong, we don't try to throw them, but what we do is we try to come to terms with them so the energy of their attack is something that leads us to a solution that no one has thought of, if that makes sense. So if you can imagine that, this is where we could go. If you imagine the idea of negotiation now, if you think about the Palestinian and Israeli conflict, the idea is we want this and we want this, and no, that stands in opposition to what we want this, and the two sides won't go together. But the theory behind all of these things is, if these individuals who are doing these negotiations can come to a place of understanding each one's needs, they will find that there's a common thread through them. And once they get over the idea that you have to change in order for me to succeed, into an idea that when we all succeed, there's no more fight, then you'll see that diminish, that those things, those solutions that no one has thought of yet will be able to rise to the surface. Because right now everybody's got their ideas, it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way. Someone had asked me to do a blog about Aikido. And so these, at the time period, it was a few years ago when Hamas had taken upon themselves to start bombing Israel. And Israel answered with tremendous show of force back into Palestinian land. And very one-sided thing, and I mean, in terms of the amount of technology used in this, and both sides screaming, no, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing this. And there was an idea that, well, we have to do that. Israel said we have to do this because the Palestinians are using their own people as human shields. So I wrote a paper and I said, or I wrote my blog, and I said, well, one of these solutions to this, to end this, would be for Israeli people to invite Palestinian people into their homes. Because if they're inviting Palestinian people into their homes, they're inviting human shields into their homes. So if Hamas is bombing Israel randomly, there's a big chance they're going to hit some of their own people. So the more Palestinians who are now in Israeli homes, the less chance there is of a one-sided attack. You could be attacking your own people. And not only that, but people will get to know each other a little bit over dinner. And they would start to find out that, you know, in fact, there's a lot of similarities in us. There's a lot of common fears and common desires for prosperity and security. And in fact, there are groups I know about. Some people go, and some of my friends have done Aikido dojos that are for Palestinians and Israelis to come together and practice Aikido, the Salam Shalom Dojo. And there's also knitting groups that get together, women who come and knit together or do quilting together, who are of disparate backgrounds, and they find that these peace-building practices eliminate those barriers that are in most people's heads, what separates you from me. Again, we go back to the inclusion of self, you know, the expansion of self. When we expand ourselves into a group that contains disparate people who we once thought of as enemies, they become enemies no more. And that's in fact what both of these people are saying. So now I want to talk about the human brain a little bit. Human brain has this an amazing thing, and it keeps what it has always had. So it's an expanding thing on itself. And central to our idea of staying alive is this portion here called the amygdala. And first I should tell you, I'm just a layman about this. I don't have any neuroscience background. I was a psychology major in college, and I used to have a lot of friends who were neuroscientists after that. But I just make my own conclusions from the research that I get from that. The amygdala is a center for response. It's an instant thing to keep your body alive. And the idea of the amygdala in this part of the brain, the limbic system, is that when something happens to you, when there's a perception of threat, it's an automatic response to go into defense. Okay? So this is to protect the body, so the body can keep going. And the limbic system is kind of in charge of that. So when there's a stimulus of, oh, there's a tiger in the woods, then the body goes into action, either fight back, run away, or hold him off. And these things are they're automatic, but the cortex also starts collecting information from the time that we're born and starts channeling everything into this part of the brain. Okay? So we get then into this part of the brain, the orbitofrontal cortex, decision-making, emotion, and reward, and that's heavily influenced by the amygdala. Okay? And the amygdala gives these signals, and it puts things into the front part of the brain so the brain can make decisions. So what essentially happens is, as we learn about threat, as we get older, we can see that some things are a big threat, some things are a little threat, some things are best dealt with by running away, some things are best dealt with by fighting back. A mosquito, you smack it. A bee, you brush it away, right? These things are all being done in accordance to the learning that takes place over time. So if you've never been stung by a bee, you might treat it like a mosquito. If you've been stung by a lot of bees, you might treat a mosquito like a bee. So the decision making starts happening. The next part I want to point out to you is this part here, the postcentral gyrus, because in Aikido this figures in prominently, because this is the sense of touch. And in Aikido, we do a lot of things with touch. And I'm bringing this up now because the things that we're going to play with in here today are going to have to do with touching and feeling. So there's that. So when you perceive threat, your brain goes into what I call a fear matrix. Okay, and in that fear matrix are all the conclusions that your brain has determined on whether or not this threat is something to deal with by running away, by holding it off, or by fighting back. And you can see that the responses are attack, defend, hold off, withdraw, escape. So, for instance, if a 5-year-old comes in here and starts screaming at me and says he's going to kill me, I might just laugh at him or push him back. Not that I would, but I could if I was that kind of person. But if Mike Tyson came into the room and said he was going to kill me, I might think it'd be better to leave. You know, see what I mean? So my brain is calculating all these things. It happens really quickly. It has to happen really quickly because the moments between the perception of threat and possible death can be a second. Okay? But on the other side of the brain, or in the same parts of the brain, are the beneficial stimuli. Okay? This is a system in our brain also to respond to love. Okay? So when we see things that are beneficial to us, if we're thinking someone's a threat and they come with a basket of food, oh, well, then our defense mechanism goes away, right? And so those things are love, caring, compassion, sympathy, empathy, helpfulness, support. So the way I can illustrate this the best way in terms of helpfulness and support is we've all heard stories, or maybe it's happened to us, that someone we see is in trouble. We see a stranger in the street who trips and falls in traffic. And what do? A lot of times our initial response is to go and help them. Even though we don't know them, we'll go out, we'll venture into traffic, we'll try to stop cars. People jump into raging rivers to save drowning people they don't know, often at their own detriment, because this part of our brain is so powerful. Now, the only thing that can overpower this is the fear matrix. Because the fear matrix, if we don't respond to the fear matrix, we could die. If we respond, and the idea that in our primordial cells, if we're out among the jungle and we hear a sound in the bushes and we can react with one or two ways. So we think it's a rabbit, food, great. If it's a tiger, oh my gosh, no. Now, if we think, oh, that's great, it's food, and it's a tiger, we don't pass on our genetic material, right? If it's a rabbit and we're afraid of it, we may miss out on a meal, but we're not going to die, right? So there's a bias towards the defense matrix over the beneficence matrix. However, with our evolving brain, we're going to find that we have now the conscious ability to override our fear matrix. Okay, and I'm sure we've all done this already. I mean, think about a movie when we're afraid and we're, oh, and then we go, oh, it's only a movie. That's a simple way of illustrating the idea that our consciousness can make us feel safer, that we can laugh about, oh, I was just so scared because Freddy was going to kill somebody with his long fingernails. So we're going to now move into the interactive section of the day, and we're going to use these beach balls, and we're going to use our friends here to help you. And what we're going to explore first is a consciousness of our fear defense responses. We're going to get a consciousness of how our defense matrix works in a very simple way.